Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Heartland. We are so glad that you're here and excited to worship with you. Would you stand with us as we sing this morning? Oh, we welcome you, Jesus. Come on, let's sing it out. I was lost, and he found me. I was sick, and he healed me. I was dead and he raised me up again. I was bound and he freed me. Now I stand in his victory. I was desperate and he saved me from my sin. Come on, let's sing this out together. Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he faithful? And look at my life, look what he's done. Isn't he able? Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he worthy? He's worthy, isn't he? He's worthy, isn't he? Mighty God, Jehovah, Holy One, Messiah, all the glory to our resurrected King. Yeah. Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he faithful? Look at my life, look what he's done. Isn't he able? Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he worthy? He's worthy, isn't he? Isn't he worthy? Isn't he worthy? Isn't he worthy? Isn't he worthy? Yes, he is. Our God is worthy. Come on, let's sing it. And isn't he worthy? Isn't he worthy? Isn't he worthy? Isn't he worthy? Yes, he is. Our God is worthy. Isn't he worthy? Isn't he worthy? Yes. Oh, he's worthy of our praise. Yes, he is. Our God is worthy. Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he faithful? Look at my life, look what he's done. Isn't he able? Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he worthy? He's worthy, he's worthy, he's worthy, isn't he? Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he faithful? Look at my life, look what he's done. Isn't he able? Isn't he good? Isn't he great? Isn't he worthy? He's worthy, isn't he?
every chance I get, I bless your name. Bless God, my hands are empty. Bless God, the praise that cost me. Bless God when nobody's watching, every chance I get. Come on, let's sing this. Bless God when the weapon's for me. Bless God when the walls are falling. Bless God cause he goes before me. Every chance I get, I bless your name. Bless God for he holds the victory. Bless God for he's always with me. Bless God for he's always worthy. Every chance I get, I bless your name. Every chance I get, I bless your name. Every chance I get, Lord, praise the Lord with me. Sing if you love his name. Come on and lift your voice with me. He's worthy of all our praise. Your offering. Sing if you know his grace. Come on and lift up your holy hands. He's worthy of all our praise. He's worthy of all our
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. Come on, let's sing this together. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. We pour it out. You give life, you are love, and you bring light to my darkness. You give hope, and you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord, and it's your breath, that it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. And so we pour out our praise. I'll pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Oh, all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are get to join in with heaven this morning. Let's sing it. And all the earth will shout your praise, and our hearts will cry, these bones will sing, we sing. And are you Lord? And all the earth will sing, and all the earth will shout your praise, and our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Oh, we sing, oh, great. Great are you, Lord. 'Cause it's your breath in our lungs. Come on, you sing it. So we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. And great are you, Lord. Oh, you are worthy, God. Oh, great are you, Lord. So, God, we thank you for your presence here with us today, God. That when we reflect on your goodness and all that you have done, would our only response be to praise you? When we look at the blessings in our life, God, would our only response be to worship you? God, we give you all of the glory and honor this morning for who you are, Jesus. We thank you for being here, for your presence being here with us. We pray all of these things in your name alone. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Well, we are so glad that you are here with us this morning, and how beautiful is it that we get to do this together as a community. So in just a moment, if you just want to turn around to the people around you and say hello and welcome them to Heartland, and then you can have a seat.
Well, good morning, everyone. How are we doing on this beautiful October day? Great.
Lively crowd.
I know. Anyone get to drive and see like the beautiful leaves changing? Okay, a couple of you today
Like
do that.
3.
I know. This is my favorite time of the year, so I will talk about leaves every time I'm up here, if I'm up here in October. But hey, if this is your first time at Heartland, we want to say welcome to you. We're so glad that you're here. In fact, we have a special gift for you. It's just a Heartland coffee mug that we'd love to give to you as our way of saying thanks for joining us. You can head to the connection point afterwards, and you can meet our awesome team of people, ask any questions that you'd like, or just go and get the mug and, be on your way. But if you want more information or just to feel kind of in the loop on all the things happening here at Heartland, you can do a couple things. One, you can scan this QR code. You can scan the QR code on the back of your seat, or you can fill out a paper card at Connection Point, and we would love to give you any information about Heartland as you kind of start your journey here.
And as we continue our worship this morning, I'd like to invite the team forward to receive this morning's offering. And if you're a guest, if you're visiting, if you're just checking us out, please feel no pressure during this part. We really sincerely want this morning to be a gift to you. But like I said, this is part of our worship here at Heartland. And for everyone who faithfully gives, we're able to do some really, really cool things here. One of which, by the way, is Trunk or Treat. Were you here yesterday for Trunk or Treat? Anybody? There was, I think, it was so much fun. I think the official count I heard was there was 1,314 people here. Felt like a million.
It felt like 1 million.
Let me tell you. But my
like,
gosh,
wow.
it was so much fun. And I spoke to somebody who said every year she looks forward to, bless you, the Trunk or Treat at Heartland. Because you know why? Because you all do such a phenomenal job on your trunks. She says, we go all out. It's a highlight of her fall. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making Trunk or Treat just so awesome.
It is really fun. The creativity and just the energy that happens at that event is awesome. And what's cool about this is that this kicks off our kind of annual Love Your Neighbor initiative. So we take about a 10-day span to just say, what are some things that we can do that just blesses our community, that blesses the people in our community in really small yet tangible ways. So Trunk or Treat kicked that off, and then we've got a ton of things happening today. We're packing snack baskets for all of the schools and first responders that will get delivered tomorrow by a team of people. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, we've taken 2 elementary schools. They've chosen this the last 3 years, and it is their favorite, one of their, I'm not gonna say favorite, but one of their favorite parts of the year. Their principals are always like, our teachers love this. Like, it is so special. So basically, they send in their perfect coffee order from the place that they want, and then we get to sponsor them. So we get to say, hey, I would love to take this name, and then we deliver their coffee in that window, and it's just a total blessing to be able to say, hey, teachers, you guys have a really hard job, and you do a really good job at this, and so we want to bless you. So we've got about half the teachers sponsored on Wednesday and half on Thursday, which means there's still half of the teachers that we need to go. So head to the website, sign up, sponsor a teacher, deliver coffee, and just know that you will make someone's day. And then we've got a bunch of other opportunities. We've got some lasagnas that we need, and fruit cups on Sunshine Supper next Monday. And then a week from today, we're doing a huge meal packing event, like 30,000 meals we're going to pack here. And that filled up really fast too. So this kind of kicks it off, and we're so glad that you guys get to be a part of it. Okay, we have a cool thing that we're starting, which you'll get to see a video about, but we are starting a new initiative and kind of partnering with a local organization called Care Portal. I'll explain a little bit more about that, but take a look at this video.
All right, thanks you guys so much for being here. So I'm really excited because Heartland is going to partner with Care Portal and all of the things that are happening within the context of Care Portal. So start off at just explaining what is Care Portal and what does it do?
Care Portal is a care sharing technology that drives action for local families and children that are in crisis. So it's an opportunity for the church to connect directly with families and make an impact in an efficient and effective way using the Care Portal technology platform. And then Nick's gonna explain a little bit how that works.
A child serving professional who knows a family, who's working with them and serving them, enters a VETA request into the Care Portal system. Any church that has set a radius that is within a certain distance of that family, their actual address, will get notified of the request. And as the church, they can then decide how they're going to take action on that. You can follow the request, you can pray for the request. If you feel led to, you can actually serve the request by providing the actual needs of the family or helping to fund them. It's really cool because it gets to the place where the church actually gets to show up as an act of worship and an act of service towards the family for kids and families in our community that we might not otherwise get to serve. And it allows us to do that in a really efficient way and to show up at their door with the love of Christ.
What I love about Care Portal is that it, I think, allows everybody to have the opportunity to do something when we feel like, oh, I want to help, but just don't know how to engage. So one of the first calls to action could be to join Heartland's response team. So what that looks like is getting a special training for 90 minutes on dignity and poverty and trauma-informed interactions, and then you're ready to go to meet the needs that come up. So you see a request come up for a bed, you could be on the team that's delivering that bed and making that connection with that family directly. Another way to get involved would be to be what we call a community responder. You wouldn't necessarily be meeting directly with a family, but you would see a need and say, hey, I've got that extra dresser that just came up, or I'm going to go purchase that dresser. So you can just be a funder or a provider of the tangible needs. And the third thing is if you own a business, you can be a blessing to Care Portal by funding or providing the items for the church response team to deliver to the family.
So there's kind of three ways. The response team is the people who actually go deliver something. But to be a responder, you don't have to provide the item. Am I correct?
Right. You don't.
And then the second way would be just somebody who's saying, hey, I can make sure we get that item, whether it's funding it or providing the actual item, and then the business owner. Now, can you be a responder and a provider at the same time?
Absolutely,
Yes.
you can. And also, if Heartland says, yes, we're going to meet that request, as a church, you have to figure out how are you going to fund or provide that item. Right now, someone from my response team is shopping, sending me pictures like, I found this and I found this, but then I or another response team member might actually be delivering. So we get to work together.
You guys have been doing this and kind of working with Care Portal and seeing how it actually meets tangible needs. Like, I love the idea of it, but now let's bring it down to kind of personal. Like, tell me about how this has actually happened and worked with a real face in this community and how that's impacted them.
Yeah, we had a family that was being served by a community center in downtown Madison. This family had experienced houselessness. They had been living in a hotel for 11 months, and they finally found an apartment with a landlord that was willing to work with them and give them a chance to succeed. And the churches of Dane County, actually 10 of them, came around this family and furnished their whole entire apartment. Another response team member and I got to show up with a U-Haul full of a whole apartment and deliver it to this family, and to have their boys helped us bring the items up to their apartment and put it in the right spot that they wanted to. And Mom was just so overjoyed and gracious, and the smile that she had on her face and her talk about hope and like, thank you so much for showing up for me. It just meant the world. Like, they had a chance to finally find a place to call home, and they knew that the church was going to show up and care about them in a beautiful way. And we got to cooperate with like so many churches across the region. So it was just a beautiful chance to show up as the church and to do the things that we say that we love to do so much.
All right, well, thanks you guys so much. I can't wait for Heartland to be able to partner with Care Portal to meet the tangible needs. It's been cool because people ask all the time, like, how can we actually help and serve and show up? And so I think this is an amazing way to be able to do that. So can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, we can clap for that. So there are a couple of kind of next steps for anyone who is just interested in this. When you walk out today, there's going to be tables at both exit doors. You can grab a pamphlet. There's a QR code just to see live requests. So as requests come in. Again, the requests come from somebody who works with families and works with kids. And so they are kind of vetted. They know the families. And so they put in the request. You can see how that works. And then the other QR code is to join our response team so that you can be, there's a training if you want to be the one to actually deliver requests, or if you just are like, hey, I'd love to just see what is needed and I'd love to provide in that way, you can grab one of these. You can also head to our website. We have a live page that just explains more of the heart and vision behind Care Portal. But this is just an ongoing thing. Like when we sign up as a church, that we are not just saying, oh, we'll just do this for a little bit, but from now on, we are engaging with our community, and the more and more people in our community that hear about this and put requests in, we as a church get to be the responders. We get to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and it's a really, really cool way to be able to do that. So check out Care Portal and be a part of it.
One last announcement, and this one is for you, gentlemen. On Friday, November 15th, we are having a chili cook-off and cornhole tournament because, men, we know, although fall leaves are lovely, really fall's all about chili. So if you have an awesome chili recipe, please bring it. Feed all of us, guys. Sign up for the cornhole tournament. And this is for men of all ages, by the way. So if you are 12 years old and you just open a can of chili, come on, we want you. And if you're 72 years old and you have the best chili recipe, please bring it. This is going to be so much fun, guys, so we can't wait to see you there. And this morning, we are kicking off a brand new series. Our lead pastor, John, is going to teach us about faith and politics.
Are you nervous? Yeah, right? If you had no idea what we were talking about today and you just found out it's faith and politics, some of you just got real uncomfortable, didn't you? Yeah, that's all right. As much as I was thinking about today, as I was prepping for today, I kind of pictured this moment in the room with all of you, and in my mind, I couldn't picture whether this weekend would get like the most engagement during the teaching, like the most amens and applause at the end, or the absolute least. And then I remembered that I live in Wisconsin, and I was like, it's going to be dead silent in that room. So I understand. But as we get started today, I want to do a little exercise just to get us all on the same page. A show of hands. If you come to Heartland, you know I love doing this at the beginning of teachings, just to kind of get us all in it together, just to show our cards, where we're coming from. But don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to get too personal. But I do want to do a quick show of hands. And my question would be, how many of you are like me? I would put myself in this category, and you kind of love a presidential election. Like you will on November 5th. You will stay up later at night than you normally do so that you can watch the results come in and like which way are the swing states going. How many of you are like, you kind of love election night? Yeah? Okay. So less of you. Okay, how many of you are the opposite, and if you could just like hit a button and skip to Thanksgiving and like it was all behind you, how many of you? Okay, that's a lot more of you. Yeah, that's definitely where the crowd is at 9 o'clock, 9:30 today. So I'll tell you, as we get going, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I do kind of love this stuff. Like I mean, I don't love everything that goes along with the presidential election, some of the stuff that gets said, whatever, but I do enjoy these elections, and I do love our system of government. Like when I was in high school, government class was my favorite class. When I went to college, I did a minor in political science. I thought a lot about going to law school, but I got married young, and I needed a job. Apparently, she wanted to eat, so I was like, okay, so I got a job, and didn't go down that path, but I do love our system of government, actually. I love the three branches. I love that the founding fathers like had the foresight to put in a system of checks and balances where one branch of the government couldn't do it all on their own, where they need the other branches to like provide some checks and balances. I think it's brilliant. And so I kind of enjoy this. On one hand, I love the political like arena. I do. I enjoy the political arena on one hand. On the other hand, I have clearly built my life around my faith in Jesus. My faith is so important to me. It's the founding, building blocks of my life. And so I'm personally excited over the course of the next 2 weeks to simply talk together and to think together with so many of you about the relationship between our faith and our politics. And as we get started today, as we get the series going today, I'll tell you what I think is really at the core of all of that overlapping and relationship. I'll tell you, I think there is a question that every follower of Jesus has to wrestle down in their own mind as we think about the relationship between faith and politics. Now, if you're new to church, if you're new to Heartland, maybe you're just exploring what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus, you get a pass on this. Like you have the luxury over the next 2 weeks of sitting here and just learning and just observing and just hearing, like, what does Scripture teach us? What does Jesus have to say about the relationship between faith and politics? And if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. You have the luxury of going, these Christians are suckers, So you get to just explore. But if you're a follower of Jesus, this is the question we have to wrestle down. And the question is, are you willing to put your allegiance to Jesus first and your allegiance to your political party second? Are you willing to put Jesus first and your political party second? Another way to ask this question is simply by saying, are you willing to look at politics through the lens of your faith, or will you create a version of your faith that conforms to your political views? Right? We all look at the world through a lens, through some filter. And as you look at the world, will you look at the political world and the political conversation through the lens of your faith, or will you create a version of faith that supports what you think politically? Now, what's interesting about this question is that Christians on both sides of the aisle would say, I'm already doing that. Right? Christians on both sides of the aisle would say, John, the reason that I am a part of the political party I'm a part of is because of my faith in Jesus. People on both sides of the aisle, Christians on both sides of the political aisle, Christian Republicans and Christian Democrats, will both make the argument, John, if Jesus was an American today, he would vote like me. It's because of Jesus that I vote the way that I want to. And both cases, and both sides can make cases for the argument. Both cases have reasons why. Both cases would point to things they read in the Bible and be like, clearly Jesus was a the Christian who are Republicans will say, something like, John, Jesus called Matthew to be one of his inner circle disciples. And we know that Matthew was a tax collector, but if you grew up with like a King James version of the Bible, right, tax collectors were called publicans. And so it's kind of like in the name that we read verses like Matthew 9:9, which says, and it came to pass as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans came and sat down with him and his disciples. So Jesus welcomed the publicans. Jesus would welcome the Republicans today, right? That's what we would say. But if you're a Democrat, you look at that verse and you go, wait, there was more to that verse. What did you cut something out? And they're right. It says, and it came to pass as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down. And so the Democrats who are Christians would say, John, look, he wasn't endorsing the publicans. He thought they were sinners. He thought the publicans needed saving. Jesus would be a Democrat today. And then you'd say, well, maybe Jesus, clearly Jesus would vote for Democrats because Jesus was a healthcare dispensing machine, right? Everywhere he went, he gave free healthcare. He healed everybody. He never asked for payment. So he was like, free healthcare for everybody, right? It's like Oprah, This is Jesus. So, of course, I'm kidding here. But the point is that both Christians who vote Republican and Christians who vote Democratic will both point to Jesus and say, I can make a case for my political views because of my faith in Jesus. And so the question remains, what does it look like to put Jesus first and our political opinions second? What does it look like to view our political opinions through the lens of Jesus? That's where I want us to start today. And I'll tell you, I think what it means, or what that looks like, is it means that we filter everything that we say and do through the lens of Jesus's most central teaching, right? Through the thing that Jesus said was the absolute most important to get right. We have to keep that calling by Jesus on the lives of his followers front and center as we engage with our political conversations. If we can do that, the overlap with our faith in politics will be okay. And so that's where I want to go this morning. You are probably familiar with this passage. In fact, 3 of the 4 gospel writers record a conversation around Jesus' teaching where he said, this is the most important thing for my followers to get right. The 4th gospel, John, doesn't record a literal conversation that Jesus had around this, but basically the entire gospel of John is built around this. And so it's really there in all 4 of the accounts we have of Jesus. You might remember in Matthew's gospel. In Matthew's gospel, a teacher in religious law comes to Jesus and he says, Jesus, what is the single most important thing for us to get right? Of all of our commands, of all the 600 plus commands that God has given to us, what is the single most important one? And you might know, Jesus shocked the crowd with his answer. Well, in Luke's gospel, where we're going to look at it today, it seems like the person who comes to ask Jesus this question has maybe he was there when Jesus said this the first time. Maybe he was in the crowd when he heard Jesus give that answer. So now he's had some time to think about it, but he comes back and he says, hey, I want to follow up on that, Jesus. Let's go back to that conversation. And so this is where we pick up the story in Luke. We read in Luke chapter 10, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus, wanted to test him. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Well, Jesus kind of turns the table on him. Jesus says, what is written in the law? How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, this is good, okay? Jesus must have been impressed because this was a radical answer. For so long, the Jews understood that loving God was the the primary calling on their life. That was the thing that was most important to do. But if you think about it, that's internal, right? Loving God with all of your heart and with all of your mind and with all of your soul and with all of your strength, that's internal. And so for generations, the Israelites, the Jews, were understanding that the primary call was to love God. But Jesus, in that conversation in Matthew's gospel, had included loving other people along with that. Jesus' point was that you might love God internally, but the way that you love other people externally is how it gets demonstrated. That's how your love for God gets lived out. Loving people and loving God are two sides of the same coin. And so this guy understood that. He understood at least that was the answer Jesus was looking for. And so he said, what's the most important command, Jesus? Jesus turns it back on him. He says, love God, love people. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. Way to go. You were listening. But Jesus had to be like, man, there is always a but with these guys. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Jesus, who is the neighbor that I have to love as myself? This guy was looking for the boundaries of that requirement to love other people. He wanted to know how far that goes, who gets included. Maybe he was looking for a loophole, right? Maybe this guy would have been a great politician. He's good at looking for loopholes, right? He wants to know, who are my neighbors? It's a good question. It's a fair question, right? Are my neighbors that I'm supposed to love my literal neighbors? Like when Jesus said that, was he only talking about the people who live next door to us? Like maybe you've got somebody across the street, you got somebody to the left and right. You love those 3 homes, those 3 people, you're good. Is that our neighbor? Was he talking about the whole subdivision? Was he talking about our whole community, the whole town that you live in? Who did Jesus mean when he said neighbor? And so Jesus thinks about it for a second. He goes, how am I going to illustrate this for this guy, for this crowd, for future generations? And he tells a story. He tells a parable to illustrate the answer. In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem, because Jerusalem elevation was very high. He was going down from Jerusalem to the town of Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So to a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus replied, go and do likewise. Now, this parable would have been so much harder for Jesus' listeners to have heard that day than it is for us today. I'm telling you, the tension in that moment when Jesus' crowd listened to this story, I bet you could have cut it with a knife. I bet it killed this Jewish religious leader to have to hold up a Samaritan of all people as the hero of the story, as the one that Jesus said, that's who you have to be like. And the reason for that dramatic moment in this story is because of the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans. And to understand the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans, you have to go back roughly 700 years. You go back 700 or so years, and the nation of Israel is a united kingdom. It's like their glory days as a country. But after King Solomon's death, the nation gets split into two. There's a civil war, and the nation gets divided into the northern kingdom. And the northern kingdom is headquartered in the city of Samaria. And then you have the southern kingdom, which is headquartered around the city of Jerusalem. Well, the Assyrian Empire in 722 conquers the northern kingdom, and they they exile so many of the Jews who are living there, and then they forcibly relocate other people into the region. Over the course of several generations, those people intermarry with the Jews who are left, and by the time we get to Jesus' day, they believed that they were the true descendants of Israel, that they were God's chosen people. That's what they believed. And of course, the Jews who had lived in the southern kingdom and their descendants vehemently disagreed. And by the time we get to Jesus in the first century, these two groups wanted absolutely nothing to do with each other, to the point where they wouldn't even walk through each other's region, which was kind of crazy because of the way the map laid it out. In fact, here's a map to show you the area. You can see Judea in the south and Galilee in the north. Those were both kind of the Jewish territories. And then you've got Samaria smack dab in the middle. And so these people would literally go around Samaria to get up to Galilee or down into Judea. And so one more example of how dramatic the relationship was between these two people groups. One time, Jesus and his followers were traveling, and they had to pass through Samaria. And so Jesus says, we're going to pass through Samaria. We're not going to go around it. So they pass through Samaria. And it gets to the evening, and they need a place to stay. They want to go to bed, and so they ask an innkeeper if there's a place where they can crash for the night. And the Samaritans discover that these are Jews, and they reject them. They say, no, you're not welcome here. And so in response, two of Jesus' disciples literally say to Jesus, Jesus, do you want us to call down fire from heaven and just wipe these people out finally? Is God ready to just be done with them? And so Jesus, you can imagine Jesus in this moment. He looks at them and he's like, what? Are you kidding me? No, I don't want you to call down fire from heaven. Come on, guys, get back in the minivan. Like, what has gotten into you? Of course I don't want you to mass kill them all, right? But that was the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans. And so in Jesus' parable, we're told that the man was traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. Both of those are in the southern region of Judea. You see Jerusalem and just above it, Jericho. Now, who would be traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, a Jew or a Samaritan? A Jew, yeah. In 99% of scenarios, that would only be a Jewish person. A Samaritan would not have been in Jerusalem and wanting to go to Jericho. And so it's understood that Jesus' listeners would have assumed that this man was a Jew. And Jesus tells the story along the way. He gets attacked. He gets beaten to the point of he is literally like his half dead. He gets robbed and he's left there. Well, you might imagine, luckily for him, along comes a Jewish priest. But instead of helping this man, what does he do? Jesus said he crossed over to the other side in order to get around him. And you have to understand the reason he would have done that was because touching somebody who was covered in blood and potentially even a dead body would have made this priest ceremonially unclean. It would have made him ritually unclean, and he didn't want to risk that because he believed God would not want me to do that. Then a Levite comes along. And a Levite was supposed to be from the group that was like the most holy of the Jews. They were supposed to maintain the holiness of the Jews. And so this Levite sees the man on the ground as well. And what does he do? He does the exact same thing. He crosses over to the other side because, of course, this is what God would want me to do. God would want me to maintain my holiness by not helping. I got to love God above all else, of course. But then a Samaritan comes along, and he cares for the man. He bandages his wounds. He cleans him up. He lifts him up and places him on his own donkey, and he takes him to an inn where he pays for his medical attention. In short, this man loved his neighbor, and Jesus said, if you want to follow me, go and be like the Samaritan. Do in concrete ways the things he did. So, when it comes to our understanding of the interaction between our faith and our politics, what did the Samaritan man do that was so good that we should emulate today? I'll give you three, okay? I'll give you three. The first thing that the Samaritan did was the Samaritan cared more about the person's needs than about what the person believed. You see that in the story? The Samaritan cared more about the person's needs than about what the person believed. At the center of the divide between the Jews and the Samaritans was their conflicting beliefs, a conflicting way to view the world. They disagreed, first of all, about where they were supposed to worship. Jews believed that the only place to worship in the presence of God was at their temple in the city of Jerusalem. Samaritans did not agree with that. They believed that the right place to worship was at their temple on Mount Gerizim in Samaria. Not only did they disagree about where they were supposed to worship, they disagreed about what constituted authoritative scriptures. So the Samaritans, on one hand, believed that only the first 5 books of our Old Testament, the text that we call the Torah, they believed only the Torah was authoritative for their lives. Jews had added to that the writings of the Psalms and the prophets, and so they disagreed with each other. They believed differently when it came to that. They had set up entirely different religious systems, sacrificial systems, separate priesthoods, you name it. They did not agree with each other. Their beliefs created this massive divide between them that I think in many ways you could compare to the divide between Republicans and Democrats today. The divide down the aisle was massive. And yet, the Samaritan in the story cared more about the person's needs than about what the person believed. When it comes to our culture today, it is so easy to take the people who we disagree with politically and to just choose to avoid them at all costs. It is so easy to take the people that we disagree with politically and to see their needs and to go out of our way to get to the other side. But why would we do that? Especially when you consider the fact that we don't believe that people go to Washington, D.C. when they die, right? We don't think anybody goes to D.C. when they die. Nobody wants to spend eternity in D.C., You know, in all the opportunities, on all the occasions that I've sat with somebody in their final days before they pass away and enter into the other side of eternity, of all the times that I've had the opportunity to do that, no one has ever said to me, John, would you just read to me a couple passages from the Constitution? Right? No, they want to hear the words of Jesus. So if at the end of our life, if it's easy at that point to place our politics below our faith and to elevate our faith to its rightful place, if that's where we're all going to get on our deathbed, why wouldn't we choose to get there sooner? And to live in a way where we see other people through the lens of seeing their needs and not just what they believe. That's what the Samaritan did. The second thing that the Samaritan did was he loved without getting anything in return. He loved even when it cost him something. The Jewish man who is laying on the ground, as far as we can tell, and the Samaritan who's passing by, at no point negotiated with each other. He wasn't like, hey, buddy, hey, buddy, if you'll pay me back double, I'll take care of you. Right? The Jewish man on the ground wasn't like, okay, 50-50, okay. No, he's like, I'll give you double or not. What? So no, but he loved him without getting anything in return. The Samaritan would not have ever gotten anything back. He wouldn't get his time back. He wouldn't get his money back. He wouldn't get, in some cases, his reputation back for crossing that divide. But he loved without getting anything in return. As followers of Jesus, we are called to do the same. When it comes to politics, there's this phrase, and you might hear it in conversations around political, like pieces of legislation, where we hear people say, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back, right? I'll support your cause if you support my cause. I'll vote for your piece of legislation if you vote for my piece of legislation. And sometimes when it comes to the legislative branch of the government, that's important because that's what consensus building looks like sometimes. But as followers of Jesus, that is not how we are called to love. We do not scratch their back if they'll scratch our back. We love even when we get nothing in return because that is how we have been loved by God. Think about this. Just because somebody sees you as their enemy, you do not have to return the favor, right? Just because somebody sees you as their enemy, you do not have to return the favor. In fact, at one point in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus specifically says this. He says, listen, you know how the vast majority of your culture lives. They only love those who love them. But he says, not so with you. And he says in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And that way you will be sons and daughters of your Father in heaven. One of the things that we see so often in our culture today is that people increasingly are cutting people who disagree with them out of their life. We see them as our enemy, and so what do you do with an enemy? You got to remove an enemy. You got to destroy the enemy. You got to put up boundaries and say, I'm not going to give you a place in my life. But when we do that, what we do is we basically just eliminate everybody whose beliefs are different than our own, and we create an echo chamber. And by just living in an echo chamber where we only hear the things that we agree with and we support, it just reinforces it and it digs the divide deeper and deeper and deeper. It does nothing to build a loving relationship with people who we understand and we learn from and we engage with and we care about and we love. Where the culture does not want to listen to the other side, we as followers of Jesus should look to listen. Where so many people in culture do not care about what the other side thinks, we are called to care about what they think about. We are called to listen. We are called to love even when they will not. We are called to love even when we get nothing in return. And the third thing that the Samaritan did that we should emulate is that the Samaritan stood out by being different. The priest and the Levite were just like each other. They were just like every other person who went down the road that day. They were just like every Jewish person or Samaritan person that you would have expected to go down that road. Do you ever feel like when it comes to our politics and the political arena that everybody's the same? Right? It feels sometimes like it doesn't really matter like which candidate is on the ballot. All I really care about is what letter is next to their name because they're all the same. Right? And in our conversations, in our relationships, sometimes it feels like I don't really need to engage in a conversation with them because I know that's a red person or I know that's a blue person. And if I know they're a red or a blue person, I know everything I need to know about them because they're all the same. And everybody just assumes that everybody's all the same. But we, as Christians, are called to stand out. We are called to be different. We are called to not blend in with everybody else the same way that everybody else blends in. In fact, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus called us the salt of the earth. He says this. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything if it's not salty. It just gets thrown out and trampled underfoot. Have you ever eaten anything that was like way too salty? Yeah, when I was growing up, my mom used to make pies. She used to bake pies all the time, and I love pies. I feel like pie is like out of vogue or something now, but pie is really good, right? And so apple pie is my favorite pie. My mom used to make the best apple pies. But there was one time where she baked an apple pie and she didn't realize it, but when she was doing it, she was probably on the phone with this cord that stretched like 50 yards across to the wall, but she used salt instead of sugar. And she didn't realize it. So we get done with dinner and she goes and she cuts that pie for dessert. And everybody's got their little plate with the little, we eat our pie. And we all bite into it and you spit it out, right? It was awful because it was so salty. And the point was that Jesus was making that as the salt of the earth, we should stand out. Because if we just blend in with everybody else, if we do everything that everybody else does, if we fall into the same traps as everybody else, then what's the point? And then he continued. He said, you're the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, here it is, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds, like your love for other people, and glorify your Father in heaven. He said that Christians should stand out, but not because we fight for our rights the hardest, not because we demand to be listened to when nobody wants to listen to us, but because we love with a love that the rest of the world thinks, that's so different. That's wild. So, this political season, can you engage in the political arena? Can you care deeply about it? Can you like really care about what happens politically? Yes, of course you can. But here's the takeaway for this morning. You can also disagree politically, but still love unconditionally. We are called to disagree politically, but love unconditionally. This is the takeaway. This is what I hope you'll remember. Disagree politically, but love unconditionally. Disagree politically, but love unconditionally. And so, because this is the takeaway, would you say this out loud with me? Disagree politically, but love unconditionally. Yeah, one more time. Disagree politically, but love unconditionally. This is what the Good Samaritan did. They disagreed politically. They disagreed as much as two people could ever disagree politically. And yet, he chose to love unconditionally. And Jesus said, if you want to be my follower, you do the same thing. Disagree politically, but love unconditionally. And so this week, to put this into practice so that we don't become people who just hear the message, what God wants to say to us, and then we walk out and we forget it, I want to invite you to put this into practice by finding a way to love in some way somebody that you disagree with politically. I want to invite you to, maybe you send them a note and you just encourage them and you bless them with your words. Maybe you buy them a cup of coffee, but you find some way to love somebody with whom you disagree politically. And some of you are like, well, I don't have relationships with anybody I disagree with politically. And so then maybe you need to start there, right? You need to start building some relationships with somebody. Somebody came up to me after the first service when I said this, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, so, can I buy you a cup of coffee this week? Yeah, man, let's do it. So find some way to love somebody with whom you disagree politically. And don't even tell them what you're doing. Don't say, I hate your politics and your political views, but my pastor challenged us to. No, you just don't even tell them that. I want you to think of somebody in your world that you disagree with politically, and I want you to remind yourself, it's okay that we disagree politically. I can still love them like Jesus loves them. And you find a way to put into practice your love for your Heavenly Father. Because loving God and loving people are two sides of the same coin. You do that, and you'll stand out. If we all do that, could you imagine? We would stand out. Could you imagine what would happen if every Christian in America did that at some point over the next 2 weeks? The impact that it would make for 100 million plus Americans to go out of their way to love in some active form, some tangible way, the people with whom they disagree with politically. Could you imagine the impact that could make? So, over the course of the next 2 weeks, I want to encourage you to be like the Good Samaritan and to see the people's needs and not just what they believe, to love even when you get nothing in return, and to stay salty. If you do that, you can disagree politically and still love unconditionally. And then come back next week for part 2 of our series, Faith and Politics. I'll see you then.